and welcome to this episode of Breck Buzz. I'm Rick Holman, your town manager, and joining me here today are two members of our town council, Mayor John Warner and our Mayor Pro Tem Mark Burke. Thank you both for being here today.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I thought on this episode, as we kind of look back at what's occurred over the past 30 days in our town government, we had an event last Thursday, which was kind of our first State of the Town address. And certainly last year, John, I think that, you tried to put out a State of the Town report, a written report. But one of the things that's been a priority, certainly over the last several years for this council, is how do we engage the community more and how do we create dialogue with our citizen group? And the council talked about, well, let's have kind of a town hall forum and do a State of the Town address and talk about accomplishments over this past year. And maybe you could start off talking a little bit about how you think that that whole event went last Thursday.
Sure, Rick. I think it went great. I think we had 78 people, and the room was full of lots of faces I wasn't familiar with. And the genesis of this was really the State of the Town letter I wrote last year. It was Ben Brewer's idea, and then this year, I think Aaron Giello came up with the idea of let's have a true town hall meeting. And we were all a little nervous, what if only 3 people show up? Well, we had a great crowd, and I read an opening statement that kind of underscored the accomplishments that we wanted to let the public know about in 2015. Then we opened it up to questions, and the questions were really centered around sustainability, economic and environmental, housing, transit, parking. I think those were the big 4 or 5 issues, and the whole council chimed in. It wasn't just the John show. Mark had several things to say. Everybody was there except for Ben, who was unfortunately ill, but it was a spirited meeting, good questions, very civil, so I think it was a big success.
And maybe for some of our viewers that obviously weren't able to be there and hear what was said, as the mayor stated, Mark, we did talk about accomplishments, and certainly I think the town has a lot to celebrate when we look back at 2015 and what are some of the highlights of what we've done there. And maybe we could talk a little bit about what some of those accomplishments were that were addressed. And I think, as staff was putting together material for the council in this presentation, one of the things that really stood out for us is there's kind of these 5 main areas that we feel that we've focused a lot of energy and the council has. And the first one of those is something that isn't new to anybody in Breckenridge, and we've been talking about it, and that's our parking and transportation. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about that at the State of the Town meeting too.
Yeah, and I think what was great about this forum was that it really was a dialogue between council and our citizens, and parking and transit, ironically, was probably most talked about issue, that and housing. But the council's really proud of some of the accomplishments, and we've started this parking and transit task force meeting. And it's a community-based, it's a volunteers in our community that are serving on this committee. They've been working for well over a year now, I think. And they've really accomplished great things. They've taken a lot of surveys and gotten input from people in the community. In addition to that, as most people know, that this town council is united completely for nearly 6 or 7 months, working with Vail Resorts to come up with an agreement for a transit and parking tax, a lift ticket tax, if you will. And, that was, really a challenge going through it, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, we came to a great agreement, where it's going to be a minimum of $3.5 million. So that's to the town coffers for parking and transit. So that's something we're really proud of doing. This committee worked, and they designated 124 core parking spaces in town for our employees. So it wasn't just about our guests; it was about current employees and citizens that live in town. We added an additional bus route, the yellow route, to the town. And I think that was like to the tune of $80,000. So, there's a lot of things that we're really proud of, but we're not done. We're not nearly done. There's as I mentioned, there's a task force going. In fact, there's actually a public forum on February 18th. I think there's one in the morning and also one in the evening.
7:30 and 5.
7:30 and 5. And so this is an organization that we hired to come in and do a traffic study during the peak times of the year, which is really important before we make any long-term decisions on, parking and transit. So that's going to be something we want to engage our community in bringing in. So that there's really been a lot accomplished. It probably seems maybe not to the community because it's a challenge on busy days in the year. Parking is still a challenge, but our goal is to get as many people out of the cars as we can, out of the core of town. The circle effect, people looking for spaces. So that was truly one of the accomplishments we talked about in parking and transit, some of those issues.
Exactly, and we'll have a little more to talk about. I want to focus a little later in the episode and really make sure that our viewers are aware of our community meeting. So we'll give them that information again before we conclude today. But one of the things that always pleases me to hear us talk about when we're engaging with the public out there is, how are we reinvesting some of our money back into the community? And when we look at the capital projects that the town has done and those types of things that have that we concluded or nearly finished up this past year, maybe Mayor, you could talk about a few of those projects that we highlighted with in the state of the town meeting.
Sure, and just for everybody's information, we had staff people at the State of the Town meeting. Tom Doherty spoke to this issue. We are in the midst of a several-year, $800,000 or $900,000 a year asphalt overlay project to get our roads up to what we thought was like a B standards. There's A, B, C, D, E, and when you have big old potholes, you're down at about the E level. Yeah. We're trying to get to a B level. To get to an A level would be very expensive, but we've committed at least $800,000 a year, I think, for 5 years. We also heated several sidewalks on the west side of Main Street. They're kind of the steep sidewalks. There's one on Lincoln, there's one on Washington, there's one on Adams, and one on Jefferson. And with any luck, we may heat the sidewalk to the north of the Exchange Building on up towards the St. John's Church next year. So those are a couple of projects I'm real proud of. The council really swallowed hard to spend that kind of money and disrupt our town with, opened up sidewalks, etc. But they're a huge success. My wife is very happy with them relative to those capital projects. We're in the midst of and they'll morph into workforce housing. We're in the midst of a $10 million workforce housing project called Pinewood 2 that's just west of the rec center out on Airport Road. And that'll be 46 units, I think, and we're going to be opening that on time, on budget, I think sometime in July. We're also in the midst of completing the Backstage Theater, or the Breckenridge Theater, which is where the Backstage Theater will run their theater, and it'll be used for other community events as well. And that was a couple $1 million project, and that'll come to fruition later this summer. So we've been very busy with some wonderful capital improvements.
I think actually they're already targeting the first production that will occur in the renovated theater in June. I believe,
great. Are you giving out tickets? Call in now for your ticket.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Well, that will be exciting. And we'll, at this next council meeting, we have some pictures showing the council the progress and the drywall's going up and all that's starting to come together. So that's exciting.
If I could add a couple things, I think sometimes we forget all the things we've been involved in, the staff, but the remake of the entrance to town, the roundabout, the medians. We've heard great feedback, especially during the Pro Challenge. I mean, it just looked beautiful on TV, and it really.
And with the lighting
and the holidays, it's magnificent, and it was money well spent. The opening of the Breckenridge Grand Vacations Community Center. Yep. That happened within the year, so that's something that this council is very proud of. Prospector Park, which is right next to the Alpine Bank.
And while we're throwing in things, Old Masonic Hall.
Old Masonic Hall. I mean, there's a lot. you hear people talk in the town about what really does the town do and the value, but quite frankly, as the mayor said, we reinvest the money. Those are what I call investments. They're not expenditures. When you talk about taking our historic properties and the theater and the community center, that's probably the largest renovation project in Summit County.
Sure.
But we have a lot to be proud of, the whole arts district now, and yet there's so much more on our plate. We're talking about the Riverwalk Center entrance, we're talking about the rec center. There's so many more things that future councils are going to have to deal with. But the reality is we've really accomplished, and sometimes we don't take enough time to celebrate the successes.
And that's part of what we wanted to do on certainly Thursday, was try to celebrate those with our community. And as you mentioned, those last kind of two pieces of our arts district with the Breckenridge Theater and the Old Masonic Hall, the other thing that the council recently decided was, they said, we built these, we want to use them, we want the lights on, we want people in there. And recently the council, kind of entered into a new agreement with Colorado Mountain College for the use of, operating. They've been operating in our ceramic studio, but we also now are pulling them in for some of their dance classes in the upper floor of the Old Masonic Hall. So again, it's council wanting that use.
And I'm thrilled about that, because we've heard over and over again the hockey community has so many needs at the ice rink, and quite frankly, to have a dance class at the ice rink when we have a brand new dance studio in the Masonic Hall on the upper floor, it's just a natural fit. And talk about a treasure right there on Main Street. I mean, it's really pretty significant.
Another project we started was the Blue River Restoration.
Oh, that's right. Jeez.
North of Coin Valley Road, which is about a 3-year project, and ultimately it's going to be $4 or $5 million. And we built a diversion stream this year. We didn't build it, but the excavators did, and now they're going to rebuild the river, make it look like a river instead of a channel. It'll have a riparian habitat. It'll be a great wildlife area. It'll be open space for our public to enjoy. So that'll be that's a work in progress.
As I said in the audience during the State of the Town address, one thing that struck me when I listened to the conversations between the council and those community members that were there was kind of the diversity and the people that were there, the different generations, if you will, of people. And, looking at some of our younger population that are young professionals, but that have that interest in, how are they going to get their first home in Breckenridge, and, looking for, and I think really acknowledging and thanking the council for the work that's being done, knowing that the potential is around the corner when they may have that opportunity for some housing in Breckenridge, and that really kind of hits home with what we're trying to do, I think.
Yeah, I think there were some good questions about that. What's the mix, rental versus ownership? We need both. We probably also need a different model or two for seasonal housing as well. We haven't figured it all out, but we're certainly working on it. We're actually having a housing summit on February 11th that many big employers will be attending. We're going to learn what their needs are, what do they bring to the table, what can the town do, what is the town's role, what is their role, how does that help sustainability. So we're definitely, it's on a front burner for sure, that and parking and transit.
Yeah, and we should actually mention, because housing is really an issue, and we've heard it over and over again. And John, you've been on council, well, you've been mayor, you're finishing your 8th year.
Yeah.
And previous to that, the council. But I think it's important for the community to understand, as the mayor mentioned, we have Pinewood 2 that will be opening in July, 46 units. But we also have Huron Landing. For those of you who are not sure what that is, that's the property where the old recycle center is across from 7-Eleven. That's going to be 26 2-bedroom rental units. We're actively engaged in a project on the Block 11, which, for those who don't know, it's the land between CMC and Breck Elementary. So I think
Upper Blue.
Upper Blue. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. It probably is in between there too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so that's nearly 100 units. Those are going to be rental. And then the town is engaged with the Wellington Phase 3, Lincoln Park. as well, which is for sale housing. So, you know, we can't answer all the problems, but I'll tell you, as a community in Summit County, I think Breckenridge has really stepped up to the plate, and we made a decision as council this year that we wanted to see multi-projects going all at once. That's a lot of work for staff. I mean, Lori Best, you know, has got to be dreaming about this at night about, you know, how she's going to get this all done. But the reality is that we know it's an issue, and so we wanted to see, you know, shovel-ready projects going, and it's a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money.
Well, it is, but I think we're fortunate that, you know, that we have, you know, we have staff that I truly believe are very passionate about this issue, and they're able to see firsthand the results of their work, and they talk to the people and that move in and occupy these, and so while it is a lot of work, I think it's very rewarding to see the outcome of our efforts and you know, and what we're able to do out there. But there is a lot of things in the mix right now, which is good.
And our citizens should know that, you know, this was the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, that we actually did different kind of financing. This is truly a public-private partnership for Pinewood 2, as well as what we're looking at to do on Block 11. And basically, the town, you know, can't use tax credits, so we've sold those to investors, if you will. And so for our community to understand that, yeah, it's a major project. You see Pinewood 2 going up. $3.5 million was funded outsourced with outside funding that were investors in the project. And I think if we're lucky enough, it's called LIHTC, which is really confusing. But I think if in fact we can get that for the project at Block 11, we could, you know, save multi-millions of dollars for that project. So the town is being creative in how we're funding this and financing it. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yep.
Yeah, and we are as creative as we get. It just allows us to leverage our dollars to do additional projects, because we would quickly run out of money if we were just trying to do this on the town's dime. All of these projects, that's for sure. You know, you spoke a little bit about funding for these housing projects, and one of the things that the council did at this last meeting was they did approve an emergency ordinance based on funding for a housing project. And while emergency ordinance is not something typically the council likes to utilize, there is an appropriate time for that. And I think the council felt that this was an opportunity to do that. And John, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, why we did an emergency ordinance for a funding option for the housing.
Well, the difference between an emergency ordinance and a conventional ordinance is an emergency ordinance goes in effect immediately. A conventional ordinance, a two-reading ordinance, takes 30 days to go into effect. It can be, the citizens can ask for a referendum on it, but they can't on an emergency ordinance. And this isn't some sort of shell game. We did it to save the taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars in interest charges, because interest rates have gone up. They got bumped in December. They might get bumped again in March. And so we wanted to act quickly so we could take advantage of the low interest rates. And had we waited for a conventional ordinance, we really wouldn't have been able to apply for any monies until around April 1st because of all this timing stuff. So it would have been perhaps the loss of $100,000, $200,000 in interest payments. So our bond counsel advised us to do this, our town attorney advised us to do this, and our finance department advised us to do this. And so we did it, and it passed 6-0. In emergency ordinance, you have to have a super majority, and so we needed 5 affirmative votes. We had 6. One of our members was ill, so we passed it in a full public meeting, and it will save us money in the long run.
Could be $200,000 to $1 million over the life of the loan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at this time, I think we're going to go to a break, and when we come back from our break, we'll talk a little bit about some of the actions that the council took at this last meeting, and then look forward to some of the things that the town has going on in the next couple of weeks that we really want to get the community engaged in. So please come back and join us for the second half of the Breck Buzz. Hello and welcome back to the second half of Breck Buzz. I'm joined by Mark Burke and Mayor John Warner. So earlier we were talking about the State of the Town address that last week and a lot of the good dialogue that occurred there. Maybe, as we kind of wrap down this episode of Breck Buzz, we could talk a little bit about some of the actions that the council took over the course of the last month in there. And one of the things that the council has been talking about for a while as we've dealt over the years with all of the marijuana issues, and Mark, I know how much you like to talk about the marijuana
Seems like
issues,
always.
And you have a liquor license too.
That's right.
is how we're going to move forward with our licensing authority.
Well, I think we need to, just for the community's sake, is share where it's been. There's been a liquor licensing authority for years. That's an independent group appointed by the council, 5 members, has really been very successful in the way they've operated. When the marijuana licensing happened, the council made a decision to have the town manager review each of the licenses. And again, 4 or 5 licenses, right, in the town.
There's 4 establishments, and some of them have
multiple licenses. So the workload is not great, but the feeling was that we really wanted to be an independent board that reviewed these situations that may arise. And traditionally, it's licensing, people looking for a new license, or it's also if there's been any issues, quite frankly, that come in front of a board. And so we wanted to walk before we ran, which is why we appointed it to our town manager. But quite frankly, we want to make sure that it's independent, that people have a fair hearing if there is an issue, including looking for a new license or any issues. And so the council made a decision to combine the liquor licensing authority and marijuana. So it's the same group of people, however, they're reappointed. So there is going to be some new people on the committee, on this board, that will be reviewing anything. And I should mention, in all fairness to some of the council members there were some council members that wanted to increase the size of the authority. At the end of the day, the will of the council was to keep it at 5. That quite frankly, it's been one person reviewing every marijuana issue now, and so to have 5 independent board members, so it will be one group. I don't think they take effect on the marijuana till April, because they were going to go through some training, specific training just for marijuana. But I think it's the right decision. I think 5 is a good number. It doesn't get too bogged down with multiple opinions and things like that. So,
and I think it's important for our listeners to know also that this authority, they're a regulatory authority, so they're looking at compliance issue, licensing issue. They don't set policy or law. That's still done by the council.
That's right.
And only the council has the authority, to change an existing ordinance or something that's established with how we regulate and how we govern, be it liquor or marijuana. And we do both of those under our own guidelines, but also in consult with the state. Mm-hmm. That have heavy licensing requirements on both those types of establishments. So,
yeah. And I should mention, just for the sake of the public, that anytime that we've brought up liquor members to be renewed, I have recused myself because I do hold a liquor license. I don't hold a marijuana license, but I do hold a liquor license. So it's truly an independent board, and I did recuse myself from that decision.
Right.
make sure we're doing the right thing in that building. And maybe you could talk about how we're going to proceed over the next 6 months and looking at the use on that.
Well, you're exactly right. 330,000 people a year enter into the Welcome Center. Unfortunately, about 200,000 of those people are going to the bathroom, which is great. We're glad we have public restrooms. But, gosh, the building is woefully underutilized, and it's really very entertaining. It's beautiful inside, etc. So we are going to hire a consultant that's going to help us understand how to better utilize the building. And are we on a fool's errand trying to, have, it be 2/3 museum, 1/3 welcome center, which is kind of what it is now? Should we reconfigure it so people can move easier through it? And this group, the BTO folks, actually looked at Park City as an example, Durango, Colorado as an example, and there are models for successful welcome centers that both welcome people, sell tickets to events, and educate the destination visitor, or the day visitor for that matter, on what there is to do in Breckenridge. And we would just like to see this wonderful building, this great location, better utilized. So we as a council authorized $50,000 to do this study and help the BTO, the BHA, and the BCA, and that's, Hal doesn't like me to do that.
I know.
Breckenridge Creative Arts, Breckenridge Tourism Office, and the Breckenridge Heritage Alliance. We authorized them to hire a consultant to see if we can better utilize that beautiful building on Main Street.
And I think that was important for you too, Mark, that create this one-stop shopping opportunity for our guests.
Yeah, keep in mind that right now people go into the Welcome Center and they can get information on basically anything. The tourism office does a great job doing that. But if they want certain tickets to the backstage theater, if you will, they have to go to the backstage theater. If they want things at the Riverwalk Center, the tickets may not be available. So the goal of the council is to have a one-stop shop. It's a welcome center. It's the hub of the community. It's right, by the river, the Blue River Plaza. As the mayor said, over 300,000 people entered that building. It's a lost opportunity, and we want to make sure that our guests have a great experience. And I was actually at the meeting where they were actually getting ready to put out the RFP. And one of the things I'm most excited about is that all of the groups that John mentioned all agree that it's really got to be an open slate. Let these people come in and tell us, what can it really be? Doesn't even need to have the little theater that's upstairs. Right. It's never used. So I think everybody's got a real open mind. They want to make sure the consultants look at that and say, what's the best guest experience, if you will? What's the best use of that facility? And I think everybody's got a real open mind, and we're excited about it. I think technology is going to play a big role in it. I think stay tuned. I think the beginning is the review and the consultant's presentation, but I think we're going to hear that we're going to need to spend some money. It's a building that probably is going to need technology, installed in it, and who knows what it could be. I mean, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I should mention, the mayor mentioned the bathrooms, which that was the biggest use, and part of it is that we added Prospector Park next to Alpine Bank and the locals grocers. And quite frankly, we've heard over and over again that there is an issue with restrooms, and people are, by the time they get to the Welcome Center, some people are actually a little bit, ticked off because they've had to walk that far. So we are actually going to be putting in some restrooms behind the Prospector Park near the Carter Museum. So I think we should mention that to our citizens, because what I did hear at the meeting when we all talked is that it's not necessarily always a great experience, the fact that people got there, that was the only bathroom they could find. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about the opportunities.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it probably is going to be some additional investment in that, but at least, let's try to spend our money smartly and wisely so that we know we're maximizing the utilization instead of, only 6% of our people, going into one part of the building, and how do we spread that out? So, stay tuned. More to come on that.
That's
topic
right.
Over the next few months, I'm sure. I'm just kind of. Sometimes the council is approached. I mean, I think Breckenridge we're in a great position that. Financially, we've had some great years in doing some things, and we reinvest a lot of money back into the community. I think that for different reasons and benefits, and many times different organizations come to the town, looking for opportunity or help. And we have kind of an annual grant program where we, do over $300,000 in grants and awards out there. Every now and then we may look under a very unique situation, make an exception and do kind of an out of cycle grant request, or at least listen to that. And John, the council had an opportunity to do that this last meeting, and certainly you have a lot of history with this organization, so maybe you'd like to talk about that grant request that we got from Burke.
Sure. First of all, FERC stands for Family Intercultural Resource Center. They're a wonderful organization that have their headquarters in the north end of the county, Dillon, I believe, or Silverthorne. And they have an opportunity to buy a piece of a building to bring a second presence to this end of the county. And they were going to ask us for $20,000 or $30,000, and then they were going to fundraise more, and they needed about $50,000. And our council, Gary Gallagher in particular, stepped up and said, let's just give them the money and make it easier on them so that they spend their money dealing with their clients, people that need help with housing, used clothing, food, etc. So we stepped up and a couple weeks ago approved a $50,000 grant to the Family Intercultural Resource Center, and they were just thrilled. They were very surprised that we would just do it just like that. And that doesn't happen very often. You're right, Rick. There are these one-off opportunities. There are asks from the community that are well thought of. There are 99% of the time they are organizations that we've dealt with many times. We have a lot of confidence in them, and so we're not being foolish with the town's money. We just felt that was a good investment in a wonderful cultural resource, really.
And we should mention that one of the other reasons I think everybody believes in what FERC does, but also was kind of leveraging dollars that they had I think a matching grant they could get for the $10,000, but also the county. It's a county building. Right. The county stepped up. Are they financing it?
Well, they sold it
undervalued,
like $100,000 under appraised value, and they are financing it below.
So we looked at this as almost leveraging dollars for a great community organization that makes a difference for our citizens, and we're talking about locals that benefit from this. I mean, this is not about tourism; it's about truly locals who need the support, mostly families. And so it was our $50,000 was allowing them to buy a building that was $100,000 less than what it would be on the market. Mm-hmm. The county stepped up, and so it was the right decision, and it was unanimous. This council unanimously agreed it was a great decision.
And I have spoken to their executive director, and they are thrilled, and they are closing this month on that building, and they realize that's all happening because of your generous donation. So, great work. We spent some time, as we do every meeting, because capital projects are an important part of what we're doing and how we're reinvesting in the community, and we kind of looked at what's occurring in the town that's in the current build stage right now. I suppose if you have young children, it's going to be exciting to know that the town is investing in a whole new playground set up out by our rec center, Kingdom Park area there. Actually, a lot of the community weighed in on that decision too. We had a process there.
Yeah, I think there was a process at the rec center where over 300 people weighed in on 3 or 4 different project designs, and we were presented with 2 of them, and they were, 110 voted for one of them and 80 voted for the other. So we had the final say, and we chose option 1. It looks like it'll be fun. Elizabeth Lawrence from our council kind of reached out to Summit Moms, a group that I think I've forgotten Aaron's last name. Nice young mother of 2. She has this group on Facebook called Summit Moms, and Elizabeth fired out hey, what else should we do? And Aaron's group said, we need more swings. Yeah. So we're going to add swings to this golf course, or to this Kingdom Park playground. So I think it'll be a great place. There's plenty of parking there. There's a rec path you could walk to the Kingdom Park playground. So I think it's a nice new addition for our community.
And I'll bet we'll see the mayor there with his grandson.
That's probably true.
And that is designed, and the company does come in and install that. So now we will pull the trigger on purchasing that, and that once the weather allows us this spring to get in there and prepare the land, that should be operational at some point this summer. So
That's great.
we talked a little bit about the Breck Theater and where that's at. So it's I just think I'd kind of reiterate to people that that will be open for the public and performances this summer. And so we're real excited. And again, that's another project that's on schedule and on budget. And those are two things that you guys love to hear.
That's right, yeah.
When we're talking about this stuff. Another, I think, exciting opportunity that the council agreed that we're making progress on is the roof over the outdoor ice rink.
Yeah, and that actually started, which I love, and I think this council has really enjoyed. It comes from the community. When there was a group of citizens, in fact, our spectator section, if you will, of the council chambers was nearly full one night, and they came to us, and we have a big hockey community here in Breckenridge, and that ice rink gets used, tremendously. The usage is big. And it's not just for organized, but it's pickup skating and it's organized athletics. But they came to us saying that we could extend the life of the programming prior to the winter and after the winter if we had a roof over the outdoor ice rink. And that is basically to protect it from the sun. And we know the sun is very, very strong here. And so we actually went through a process of our capital projects. We met as a council during our retreat. And so we made the decision, I think we budgeted $1.2 million. To cover the outdoor ice rink, and so that's in the works. I think our citizens are very excited. It's allowing us to do some things that we probably otherwise couldn't have done. I know Mike Barney has said that it's going to be a tremendous asset, and these are the kind of things that the council continually looks at. What are the assets that we have, that we can just keep, adding to them to make them better, more user friendly, as well as extending the lifespan of the programming that we do.
And certainly our goal is to try to have that on schedule and built so that this next winter we can actually be programming activities out there in that mid-November timeframe.
Yep.
So.
As an aside, you're right. We have a very enthusiastic hockey community. I had a great time. I went to the Breck Bucks game this last Saturday night, and probably 100 spectators. Great energy, really a lot of fun, and a great brand of hockey. That's our semi-pro team that plays here throughout the winter. So I enjoyed myself, and the people I ran into were all very vocal in their support of how we support hockey, ice time, and now this roof on the second piece of ice. They're really thrilled about.
And it keeps our young people, allowing them to have other opportunities other than just figuring out where they're going to be. So, there's a lot of young community members, our kids, grandchildren, that are going to be using this for years to come, and it keeps them off the streets and activities. So it's really an advantage.
Yep.
All right. As we're nearing the end of this episode, there's a couple of things that we alluded to earlier that I really want to just spend a minute or two and focus on. It's important that I think the community understands and looks at the schedule. We really want to get, especially as our community outreach is really starting to pick up. We've been talking every episode, we talk about parking and transportation. We talk that it's no longer a study, but this is an expert planning team that we've brought together, and we've promised that there will be opportunities for community input. We want community input. That first opportunity is occurring on February the 18th, and that will be at the Breckenridge Grand Vacations Community Center. We'll have two community forums. We'll have one early in the morning at 7:30 a.m., and that's for those people that maybe can't get away later in the day. We're hoping some of our business or restaurant people may choose to show up earlier in the morning to that. 7:30 a.m. on February the 18th, and also on that same day at 5 p.m. Now, we'll be putting out a lot of information to the community through social media. We'll be putting notices in the paper, letting people know. This is another way to let them know that we really want the community to show up there. We'll be we're working with that group that'll be facilitating the process. We'll be breaking off in teams, looking at different aspects related to how we manage transit, how we manage parking, how we manage our congestion. And so now is the opportunity for you to get involved in that. And there'll be at least 2 other opportunities in April again, and in June we'll be at different levels that we'll be wanting to get the community pulled into that. Also, John, you mentioned earlier on February the 11th. While this is not just, this housing summit is not necessarily something that we're opening up to the community, because we have invited different stakeholders from large employers to the school, the hospital, other groups like that, and your mom and pop retail or restaurants, to understand the different levels of people's needs related to housing.
Right.
It's a critical step for us, I think, as we're planning and deciding what does the next year or 2 look like and what we do there. So, I want the community to know, because they have heard us talk about that summit is going to occur next week. And we'll be reporting back to people, letting them know what we're hearing there, what other opportunities just may present themselves.
No, and I think it's great. I had breakfast with a couple school board members last week, just as an aside, and unbeknownst to me, they would like to participate, which we all hope for, and but their feeling is their population of workers probably favors the ownership model over the rental model, maybe 80-20. And we've been hearing lately it ought to be the other way for most of the community. So it'll be good to hear from these stakeholders what their needs are. I'm sure the mom and pop retail outfit may want more like seasonal housing, and the restaurateurs that are open year-round may want both year-round rental, long-term rental, and perhaps ownership for some of their key employees. So we're going to listen to what the community desires and what they think their needs are, and it's going to be a lot of good information coming to us.
A lot of exciting things going on.
Rick, could I mention one other thing? Because the taping of this is obviously the beginning of February. There's also an election that's going to happen in April. And it's a very, very important issue for our town, because there are 3 council positions up, and our mayor, who is term limited, will no longer be our mayor. And so I just want to encourage all of our citizens to really stay involved, because there will be some community forums, 2 already planned. I think, I'm not sure of the dates, but I know the tourism office is going to be hosting one, as well as the Real Estate Association. And I also think Summit Daily. So this is a really, you've heard all of the things that we've talked about that this town is engaged in, all the capital projects, the big issues that are coming. Well, quite frankly, it's the elected officials that make those decisions, and they're chosen by our citizens. And there is only one incumbent, I think, running. So there's a real likelihood that we could have, at the very minimum, 3 new members of council, and could be 4. So I hope our community gets engaged, participates in these programs, and pick significant candidates to support who are going to carry on some of the projects that we think are very important in our community. And I'm not sure, John, are you doing another Breck Buzz before?
Yeah, my last one is like March 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you both very much for being here today. It's
You're
been
welcome.
a very informative session. And I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Breck Buzz.